Empire. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on there, go from there. You know the deal. And also, don't forget the Bram Weinstein Show is now you can go watch that on the Empire Media YouTube page or listen to it, whatever you want to do. Anyway, so today I'm joined by former Washington tight end Logan Paulsen. We get into a lot of topics, starting off with some camp fights, some fun memories of camp fights, because getting into that time where there may be one or two of these coming up, get padded practices, 90-degree heat, recipe for skirmishes. Anyway, also what he has taken from the first week and a half or so of camp, what he looks for. Very insightful as always. And just as a little programming note, they have practice Sunday, they have practice Tuesday, they travel to New York on Wednesday, joint practice Thursday, walk through Friday, and then game on Saturday. And some of the days, like Monday, I think is a walkthrough. Saturday, as you're listening to this, they had some level of walkthrough. We don't have access on walkthroughs, but I'll continue to do a podcast every day. Anyways, that's enough. Here's my conversation with former Washington tight end Logan Paulsen.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, the John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
Okay, Logan, first of all, thanks as always for coming on. A little bit hot today. What's it like for a player, as we record this, it's Friday, it's going to run, or Saturday, but what's it like for a player on those kind of days? And do the Texas and Florida guys annoy you because they say this is like spring for us?
Yeah, everyone has their take on what's hot and what's not. You know, everyone's like, oh, in Texas, this is like a spring day or whatever. But this is part of training camp. It's part of like the mental grind. When it's a little bit warm, what is today, 8 of training camp? Like they always seem to come kind of right in the middle, right when it's starting to get hard, right when your body's not feeling good. The temperature creeps up a little bit, and you just got to be mentally focused and kind of grind through it. And I do think there is some benefit to kind of having to suffer is a strong word, but kind of work and grind your way through a tough practice, especially midway through training camp. So yeah, this is it's part of the deal. It was never fun, but it's part of having the best job in the world, right? You got to kind of have some days where you're pushing yourself a little bit to kind of manage the weather.
How do you manage when it gets hot like that? Because when you start to see a little bit of shoving here and a little bit of shoving there, and it's competitive guys, they're in pads, they're going to bump into each other, it's going to happen. How much does the heat add to that?
I think it adds quite a bit, honestly, like, because you're just getting a little bit more ornery, a little bit more irritable, you're tired, you're sore, and then someone pushes you a little bit more than you think you should. And I also think it's the time of camp. Also, it's kind of a two-pronged sword there. You know, when you're at the 8th practice, it's like you know them, they know you, they know how to push your buttons, I know how to push your buttons. I remember I'd go through camp and if I wanted to, I could get in a fight with the guys that I was going against every day because you just knew them so well. You just knew the things that would tick them off. So I think it's probably the temperature. I think you're probably a little uncomfortable. I also think it's that time of camp, and this joint practice can't come fast enough because when guys start doing that, it's time they got to go play somebody else, you know. So
who was the most annoying guy that you would want to, is there a guy that you would say, like, I really would like to have gotten this guy or anybody like that? Who would be the most annoying in a training camp practice for whatever reason?
You know, what's funny is most people told me I was the most annoying, honestly. Because I always was playing, you know, like with 100% intensity, and there are guys, you know, like Kerrigan and Brian Arakpo and Lorenzo Alexander, who are kind of like, hey man, like chill out. And so I've come to learn that I was the most annoying guy to go against in practice, and the DBs all hated me because I'd always block after the whistle and block downfield. And me and D Hall, like, we're kind of polar opposites at the time. He's this established pro, and I'm trying to make my name, and he was always telling me how dumb I was for practicing so hard. But that was, I guess it was me. So no, whatever anybody wanted, I was always ready to go. So.
Yeah. Do you remember, was there any good fights that you remember? Because you would have been around for a couple with other teams.
Yeah.
But do you have one that you remember from your own practices? I know I would have been there. But
Yeah.
I just, because some of that stuff bleeds together.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you get in like a couple of shoving matches. One of the ones that I very fondly remember is Niles Paul got in a fight with Marcus White in 2000, must have been a 12, 13, something like that. And just the immediacy of it, like Marcus kind of bumped Niles funny, and then Niles just gets up and starts like pinging his fists off the dude's face mask, and like without any regard for his hand health or anything. And then he came up to me a little bit later. He's like, "Man, I think I might have broke my hand." I'm like, "No kidding, dude. I just saw you punch him in the face mask like 4 or 5 times." And then another great one was Doug Worthington versus,
Yeah.
it's not Mike McGlinchey, but Mark McGlinchey, something like that. He was
Yeah.
a backup center, and it was a big old row. Everyone was pushing and shoving, and Big Doug was very
I
big, and he
remember this one.
reached kind of over the pile of people
Yeah.
and grabbed the face mask of McGlinchey and literally just sheared the bolts of like ripped the face mask off the helmet. I don't know if you remember that, but
I
just
do.
watching him walk around with like, just the helmet with no face mask. And it was funny because the fight immediately stopped. Like everyone was like, "Whoa, this is crazier than anything we've ever seen before." And then in the meeting, Jay was so funny. He always had a knack for like kind of picking up on these things. Was like, "Hey Doug, just a heads up, we're having drug tests in 4 days. So whatever you got to do to get ready for it, make sure we pass that one." You know what I mean? Just like just one of those things that kind of made the dog days of training camp go by a little bit better.
I'm surprised to hear because Niles usually stayed away from that stuff.
Yeah, he was always such a pacifist. One of the best guys to play when he was on your team, one of the best guys to
Oh
play with
yeah.
for sure, but a very intense human.
He's a guy that when you'd ask guys like, who's the one guy you'd want to go, if you're in a fight in an alley, who's the guy you want? It's Niles.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And he just like that's how he carried himself. And he was such a loyal teammate, such a loyal friend, such a violent physical competitor, like such a fearless competitor in that way. So he was an awesome guy to share a locker room with. And it was awesome to have him in the tight end room because you always knew he had your back.
I love Niles. And I remember my son was playing receiver one year. Niles was a rookie, and he had a block against somebody, and he drove this freaking guy 15 yards. Honest to God, this
Yeah.
is not a lie. 15 yards and out of bounds. And I brought my son into the office because I was rewatching the game. I'm like, when they tell you to block as a receiver, this is the example. And I'm
That's
like,
what you're talking about.
oh my God. It was like I loved how he played. Absolutely. And like goes to tight end, he's undersized, and he fought every time. So I mean, not literally fought, but fought his ass off every time. So anyway, but I actually could stay on this whole road because it's kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
But we'll transition to current commanders and good stuff. But I know it's early. So because you're a former player, you're going to look at different things and assess things differently and process
Yeah.
it differently. So what are a couple of things that, like, when you're going through this period, what are some of the things that you're looking for that are a little bit more revealing than maybe just the average person?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a couple things. Let's start with the offense. Offensively, I'm really looking at like formations, personnels, how they're deploying certain guys. And that's kind of my main focus. So I really enjoy coming to team and watching the stuff that Cliff's pulling out and how he's using certain guys in the formations and how he's getting to certain concepts, the motions and the shifts. And I've been really happy and impressed with some of that stuff because I feel like he's found some really good opportunities, kind of easy opportunities for the quarterback, which is great. They've done some creative stuff in the run game. I really enjoy that. Also, then kind of that's like the highest level, and then as you get down there, it's like who's getting more reps at left tackle? What's the receiver rotation look like approximately? Like how are they using Zach and Ben Sinnott? Like what are their usage patterns? And again, I do think that's also revealing, just kind of a mindset certain guys, or like a perspective regarding certain guys. So that's it. And then on defense, really for me, it's it's personnel packages almost exclusively and coverages. Like that's really what I'm trying to get a feel for. Like, a couple days ago they were doing kind of a second and long, third down type period. What do those blitz packages look like? How are they getting to them? Who's playing defensive end? Frankie Louva, where's he lining up? Who's playing the safeties? Like all that type of stuff. Because I do think again, it's still so early, and people say, "Oh, you can learn a lot from training camp," and I agree with that. But I also think you're still trying to figure out who does what well, especially with the new staff. What kind of roles guys are going to have. So that's kind of what I'm watching and just trying to get a feel for potentially what the coaching staff may or may not be thinking.
You can be fooled by a lot of this too.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's where that I've always learned over the years is take it and try to put it in context and perspective and not go overboard with it because, were you here when Larry Johnson was here?
Yeah, I was.
He's the example because everybody thought he had this great camp and then he averaged like 2 yards a carry or less than
Yeah.
2 yards a carry. And it wasn't like, because you don't know how to always assess something. So
Right.
did it take you a while, even as a player, to learn what might be real, what might not be, what are the things that I should be looking for to see what might translate to the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more as I've gotten a little bit older, just don't make any conclusions.
Yeah.
You can have information, you can like make an informed decision and say they did this at practice, but ultimately, like you never know how it's going to shake out. And I think over the last couple of years, there's been some relative excitement about the quarterback position. With Carson Wentz, for example, when they brought him in, a lot of people were excited, and then with Sam Howell, everyone was excited about him too. And I think there were reasons to be excited about them, but looking back, there was also reasons to kind of be nervous or be skeptical. And then those those kind of those reasons for uncertainty were exacerbated when they start going to joint practices. And you always bring up the story of, Manuel Forbes looked good in practice, then he goes to the joint practice and doesn't look good. I think the more data you can get on these guys and on these systems and on these setups, the better you feel about it. Because right now they're going against the same defense every day. So everyone says, "Oh, Jaden Daniels looked great." I have so many conversations with all the guys on the beat every day. How good does Jaden Daniels look? He looks great. He's doing a great job. But he's going against the same defense now for about 3 months.
Right.
So what happens when he goes against a new defense? What happens when they get a wrinkle? What happens when like the blitz is real and the pressure is real? Does that change? What happens when the windows are a little bit tighter and he's got to squeeze it into a tighter window? Like those are all things that he's shown flashes of. But again, like to make a conclusion or a declarative statement about what he is or he is not going to be this year at this point in the offseason is kind of insane. And I think a lot of people do that. And a lot of people who come to practice, they watch 4 reps and they say, "Oh man, this guy's ready to start." Like Brandon Coleman's a great example. He's had a great 2 days of one-on-ones. He's looked really good. He's moved his feet well. I think teams look good. But I'm not going to say he's definitively the starter because there's so many more things that are going to happen. We got preseason games, we got joint practices, like we got so much more information. So has he done a good job? Yeah. But am I going to say he's going to be the left tackle of the future? You'll never hear me say that. And it's because of being burned on evaluations on small sample sizes in the past.
And I'm with you on there because what I always try to say, listen, I like a lot of what I've seen from Jaden, but also what I've heard from others about.
Yeah.
And to me, that matters more than because as you know, and I always talk about like I might see a completion, they might look at it and say, well, that was the wrong read. It was a completion. It might please these people, but it's the wrong read. Or what they see is, and going against the same defense, maybe you see a certain leverage. So now you can communicate to the receiver what you want to do because you've seen that a lot. So when you get to the Jets, you get to the Dolphins, how do you then handle that? But I think it's always been to this point, I like what I've seen and heard. And there's always that next step to see. And I also think, Logan, too, with him, like, I think he'll be good. I don't know when. And I think same thing, Brandon Coleman. I think I think he can certainly play in this league. But when does he get to the level? Because now it's like, okay, let's see him against certain pass rushers or certain other guys that are different than he's used to.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And one thing I've tried to do this year is just kind of listen into other teams' media regarding their training camp. And it's all, "Oh, this guy's the best, and this guy's this, and this." Everybody's having these storylines and narratives, but it very rarely comes to fruition the way that these teams and the way that we think it will. So I'm always kind of slow playing it. Again, Jaden, I think, has done a great job. All the things you talk about. And, and everyone says, oh, well, people can say a lot of things about him in terms of what he's doing off the field, but it shows up in practice.
Yeah.
Like the anticipation that he throws with, the understanding of the coverages, his relationship with the receivers, like his understanding of where the football needs to go kind of so early in his drop and stuff. Like all those things are great. And I'm really excited to watch him play. I just think the evaluation's incomplete. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm down on him or he's
No,
playing poorly, because he's done a great job. And I'm going to steal something from Craig Hoffman from our podcast. He's always like,
Man podcast.
yes, he's taking the test that's given to him and he's acing that test.
Correct.
So that's all I can say as up to this point in terms of the evaluation.
You're walking, you're climbing a ladder. This is,
Yeah.
you go each step along the way, but each step gives you more information. And I agree with Craig, like everything so far, he's passed. All the tests so
Right.
far, he's passed, and he keeps moving up. Or like maybe it's a video game. You got to this level, now you're at this level,
Right.
now you're at this level. But he keeps showing like there's been yet the most positive thing for him is you haven't seen any reason to think that he wasn't the right guy for them.
Correct.
That's, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
like that's been a good development for him too. So what is it like? For the entire month of August, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is offering multiple ways to save on climbing and zip lining and 50% off axe throwing. There are only a few Sundays left without football, so it's time to get that last summer adventure on the schedule. There's no better place to spend the last few days and nights of the summer with friends and family. Don't just take our word for it. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring was named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. For the rest of the summer, you can get the best climbing, zip lining, and axe throwing in the country, up to 50% off right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/kind. With him, is there anything else that from a player perspective, again, I can see anticipation, I can see this, but are you seeing, like, what are you seeing in terms of checks and things like that, or cadence or anything like that from him?
I think he's just got a really good feel for the position. He's just got a mature, like, like you play with a lot of guys. I played a lot of guys over the course of my career, like college, NFL, even like now coaching at high school. And there's something about the quarterback spot, like there's just and I've heard other guys say this, there's like a gravity to him. He just kind of draws people to him and the moment's not too big for him. So I think when you watch practice and everyone's, on edge, everyone's doing all this stuff, like he's like Mr. Chill, Steady Eddie. He's got command of the huddle. He's confident with his cadence. He just seems to have a maturity to him, which I love to see. And again, like it's still early. There's a lot of adversity he's going to have to experience over the course of this year, but he just does a great job with that stuff. And you mentioned cadence, like his maturity to kind of handle that and control the offense in that way. The checks, obviously, that's a big part of what Cliff wants to do, and understanding when to deploy them. I mean, obviously, we don't know for sure, but it just seems like he's kind of executing those in the right moment. So I've been really impressed, again, with kind of everything he's done. Like he's just done it like the right way. And I think that speaks to his off-field work. Like he can't be playing this well and not be putting a lot of time in. And that shows me that it's important to him, that he likes to study. And I've never been around a quarterback, and I've said this on this show before, that was good to any level and didn't study, and I think he's doing that stuff. And that makes me excited. And so to your point, like that player engagement element that he brings is awesome. And then his play is also awesome. So I think it's all headed in the right direction. It's just about, I really can't wait to see them up in New York for that joint practice or the preseason game if he does play.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to keep in mind too is it's a new offense, and you have a new play caller, and you have new parts, and you have a rookie still, regardless, he's a rookie quarterback. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's so, like, to me, what I want to see is keep building, right?
Yeah.
Keep building on it, because if you do, that bodes well for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the other thing that's also been really impressive is, and I think, this would be kind of a longer term study that, maybe I'll have time for, but like, just how quickly everyone seemed to pick up the offense. And one of the criticisms of kind of like, the Cliff air raid system is that the verbiage is a little limited, but I do think it's helped these guys play fast. Like they're playing with a great tempo. They're lining up quickly. They're always kind of in the right spots. There aren't a lot of mental mistakes, and there is a level of complexity and nuance to the offense, which is great. And I think the great thing is to see Jaden understanding that, and then understanding kind of what the different positions and motion or formations, excuse me, and motions are giving them from an offensive standpoint. I think is also really cool. So lots of cool things, and again, it seems like it's ticking along at a very good clip offensively, and I think Jaden deserves a lot of credit. I think the offensive staff deserves a lot of credit. It's just about, does that keep going? Because they're gonna, again, like they know this defense so well. They know this Joe Witt Jr. defense probably like the back of their hand. So even by accident, Cliff might game plan in something that is a rule breaker for the defense that makes easy completions and easy throws. But I mean, I guess the same thing's true for the defense. A couple of days ago, they made this beautiful completion on like a on a high low that they got to in this really creative way on the right sideline to Jahan. They tried to hit it again today, and it was covered up. And so it just shows that like they're kind of playing off each other. But again, the familiarity is really helpful for the offense. I always found that was so helpful in training camp because you're like, I know when they're bringing this blitz. I know when to check out of this. I know when we should can this run because every day we see the same thing. So now, again, like the next big thing, in my opinion, like he's answered every question he needs to. I need to see him versus another team, and that's what I'm really excited for with the joint practices.
And the one to Jahan was, it was a 1-by-3, and they pump fake. He comes down out of the slot.
Yeah,
Really nice throw the other day. But the other thing is along those lines too, and they just had a couple crosses to Ertz.
which have been exquisite. And that's the
Right.
thing, maybe, sorry, John, to cut you off, that I've
Oh,
been like the most excited about. Because the one thing about those deep crossing routes is you have to understand defense really, really well. And you have to understand space. And you have to understand how the defensive back is positioned. So, like, when you get that clear out route, is that guy in between? Because he's throwing to grass aggressively, anticipating Zach running to space, and he has to trust that that guy is going to attach to that clear out route, that Zach's going to take a good angle coming out. And so, like, there have been times where I've been on the sideline and he's probably hit, what do you think, John? Probably 8 of those over the course of
oh, for
training camp.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're just like, it's covered. And then he lets the ball go early, and you're like, I don't see it. And then probably when the ball's, a third of the way in the air, it just opens up and the ball is completed. Great catch by Zach, whoever's on the crosser. I'm like, that is something that everyone said he couldn't do or didn't show in college, and he's shown it every single day at practice.
And there was one day where Castro Fields jumps it from the side.
Yeah.
And that may have been, I remember talking to some of the coaches that thought, well, maybe the timing was off on that one, right?
Mm.
And what I've seen subsequently is just it seems like a more really getting it to it in a better rhythm with it too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's all. I think that's where the learning curve is too. Who anybody else offensively that has jumped out to you, especially with the pad work?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Terry has just been very consistent. Him and Emmanuel Forbes have had some very consistent battles. B Rob has done a great job, in terms of his vision, the way he's running with power. Like he's going to be a problem in this offense because of how they create such horizontal. And we talked about this earlier this offseason, but like because of all the empty kind of spread out formations they get in, if you get past that first D line, he's big enough and strong enough to make somebody miss or run somebody over, and that can be scary for a defense. It reminds me it's very comparable to what James Conner did in Arizona when Cliff was there. Kind of that bigger back that can make you pay when you're in those lighter personnels. Austin Eckler's flashed a little bit. It's been impressive to a certain degree. I think Zach, obviously, the consistency that he's practiced with, just from the entire offseason program to now, like he's catching the ball well, he's running good routes. And then I think Sam Cosmi deserves a shout out. He's done a great job in one-on-ones. He's going against the big dogs, John Allen, Daron Payne, and he's setting the tempo, and he's looking like a guy who's ready to take that next step, which is awesome because he was playing amazing football the last couple of weeks of the season, last 6-7 games. So he's done a great job. I've been impressed with pads, specifically with Ben Sinnott, in terms of like how they've used him, where they've lined him up, his physicality on some of the run stuff. So there's been a lot of really positive things, but I think maybe the guy that's flashed the most in practice is the guy that no one really talks about, and that's Bryson Tremaine. Like every day, dude's making. I mean, I didn't want to. He's just making explosive plays, and like in this offense, like when you get in those situations where you get that X receiver in a one-on-one, Cliff likes to hit that on a vertical. You know, he likes that guy going vertical. If you go back, watch that Arizona stuff. That was a big thing they did with Kyler Murray, and that's a big thing. They seem to be, again, I'm not, we're not supposed to talk about scheme like that,
Right.
but they seem to be doing that. And Bryson Tremaine has been the beneficiary of that. And for him to consistently win those 50-50 opportunities for a guy who has shown out in special teams and catching the football, I think it's a testament to him, and we got to shout him out in this category for sure.
I think you're right. I think Tinsley gets in that category too
Yep.
a little bit, because I think he's shown some of those same things in special teams and some big plays. Defensively, what have you seen there? Like, what has stood out to you so far? I mean, the communication to me has been a big deal.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked about it enough, because I talked about it in the past, but it's been a dominant thing every day, especially compared to last year.
Yeah, and I think when you talk to guys like Fletch and Smoot and, even Sean Spring now, who's helping out with the show, and then you hear Dan say, like, you hear good defenses before you see them, I think they're really trying to embody that principle. And it just, I mean, it's just such a stark contrast to what was happening last year, and just how different it was and how guys were just kind of playing it straight and they weren't on the same page. And, now it's this, that to me has been something that really sticks out. Also, I think the kind of complexity of the coverages, but how decisive people are playing within the coverages, how it just, and again, it kind of coincides with the communication, how we're showing man, right? But we're going to hold it through the cadence, but we're going to get to Tampa 2, or we're going to get to cover 3, and we can hide these disguises because we're all on the same page. We all know what we're doing. And that was a feature of the defense in Dallas that was so impressive. And again, it's a testament to Jaden that he's been able to kind of get a feel for those disguises a little bit better and where the ball should go. So, but that's something that really sticks out to me. Obviously, the usage of the other thing that is, I think, maybe the most compelling storyline of camp is like defensive back usage, because you just have so many different body types. You got Jeremy Chin up in the box. You got, Percy Butler deep, and then all of a sudden, a different package is in, and Percy's in the slot, and Jeremy's deep, and Quan's all over the place, and Sanders still's in the. It just, there's so much diversity, there that is that's really fun, and it's really refreshing to see, because I think that's the way modern defenses are going. When you hear people talk about modern NFL defense, it's how well they disguise in the back end and how they stress the quarterback from that perspective. And I think you are definitely seeing signs of that for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things I've been looking forward to most, because that gets into the chess match with an opposing quarterback. And I think they have guys back there who know how to communicate. But I also think it's, to your point, when you talk to guys, it's about not simplifying the defense, but clarifying the responsibilities better. That's a better word, clarifying, and just understand that, and allows you, play fast football, or players who play fast aren't always like the fastest 40 guys. They're the guys who understand what they're doing the best and can react. And
I think you see that with the corner specifically. I think you're seeing a much more effective Benjamin St-Juste. I think you're seeing a much more effective Manuel Forbes Davis too. A guy that was kind of much maligned coming out of LA with the Chargers. Like, looks good. They look confident. They look aggressive. They look decisive. And that speaks to your point. Like, when you have clarity as a player, I can't tell you how absolutely empowering that is. When it's like, hey, when it's this look, we're doing this. When it's this look, we're doing this. And don't worry about this other thing, because this play, we're not going to call it then. And you're just like, okay, I can work and focus my preparation. And I think you see that with everybody. I think you see that with the communication. And there are times where you can tell they're a little indecisive, but that's what training camp's for, right? It's to add clarity in those situations, to go meet about it and be like, hey, man, good job by the offense, man. We weren't expecting this, but this is what we want to do that. And it's awesome to see kind of that second string group of linebackers, the Bo, how do you say his last name? Number 51, Bo Burma. Bauer. And then number 47, Jones. Like, they're checking into different coverages off of blitz looks. They're calling blitzes. It's just like everyone seems to have a much more comprehensive mastery of what they're doing defensively, and a greater confidence and how best to execute it. So I'm excited about that group quite a bit, and I'm excited about the secondary quite a bit.
It's funny because watching Bauer, like, he really seems to have a deep understanding of this defense already when you watch him, and how decisive he is on his calls. And it's, it's like, dude just got here. But yes, it is. It is. I agree with that. And with the tight end group, so that's obviously your spot. Zach Ertz, I think, as long as the guy stays healthy, I think he's going to be productive and he's going to be a really valuable piece for them. Sinnott, I haven't seen him make a lot of catches, Logan. So I
Right.
don't, and John Bates is John Bates. Cole Turner, we're still kind of waiting. I think, Yankoff and Rogers, interesting. But how would you assess that group based on what you've seen and maybe your expectations?
Yeah, I think that group's going to be a bunch of knuckle draggers in a good way. And so, like, obviously Zach is the guy who's going to catch the football and do all this dynamic stuff, and he's done a really nice job of that in camp. I think, you see, I said this on our podcast a bunch, like the dark arts of route running, stems, how to break leverages, how to read coverages, how to identify coverages pre-snap. He does a great job of that, and that's shown up in the past game. I think Sennett is a little bit more of a thumper than I thought. Everyone said he's going to be a fullback. And I think his reps at fullback and what he's been able to do on the move in terms of blocking have been great. And I think that gives you so much flexibility when you're like, hey, man, is this guy going to be a fullback because you're going to play in the slot? Because it's going to affect our call defensively. And I think when you look again at San Francisco, one of the things that Kyle Juszczyk brings is he brings enough pass game upside that defenses have to respect him in that way. And it gives them tremendous advantage when it comes to running the football because he is so physical. So I think that is it. And then, today Bates, for example, they were running, it was a 4-minute drill. They were running like a tight end move to a power. So like kind of motioning to the kick out, which is becoming all the rage around the NFL now. And I don't really usually think of Bates as the guy that does that. I think of him more as like the inline maestro. And there was a significant collision on that. And so like the toughness and physicality that those two guys bring allow you to do so much more offensively. Like they talk about I was listening to something The Athletic just put out about the best offenses in football. And one of the things that to me helps characterize the top 5 offenses of the league is that they can be extremely physical when they have to be. So having two bodies like that are going to help you kind of embody that and say, hey, B-Rob, it's time to get downhill. And we've got these two dudes that are going to thump it out for you. I think it's pretty cool. So I think that's kind of where I see the position group going. And obviously I think Sennett's going to develop as a pass catcher. And I think Bates isn't bad in that department, but I do think that makes that 4th spot to me after watching it kind of on the field a little bit more interesting because I think you're looking for a guy that can find you mismatches in case Zach goes out for whatever reason. So is that Cole? Is that Armani? Maybe, like they've been both kind of quiet. I saw Cole make a couple plays a couple days ago. Kind of every camp he does that, and you see his ability to make contested catches. I do think having Daniels will elevate him as a quarterback that seems to really understand and trust guys, trust his ability to put the ball out there. So we'll see. But I think that 4th spot's still up for grabs. And maybe, quite honestly, maybe that's a guy like Bryson Tremaine, or maybe you feel like there's another big body receiving threat that can get that done for you. But right now, I think it'll be interesting to watch the next couple days, next couple weeks of practice and see of that next tier of guys who really separates themselves and who really says, I deserve to be on the roster.
So last thing, as a player, what would you learn about yourself, your team from those joint practices?
Yeah, as a player, I always thought it was hard because I was so concerned about my performance. Like I wasn't really thinking. But I do think, you do come into practice and you're like, oh, like this is what a good defense looks like. Or, oh, this is what an offense with a quarterback that can execute at a high level looks like. Or this is how you practice. Like I remember when gosh, who was it? Was it the Houston Texans or it was the New England Patriots when they came in and they just were on defense. They were so physical. They were running to the football. They were just getting after it in this. And it was like, oh, like that we definitely have another gear we haven't been hitting on. And watching Tom Brady and watching him just dissect our defense, like no matter what we did, like he had the answer. And it's like, oh man, like Robert's got a long way to go. I think that can be a very humbling and a very informative kind of space to be, as a player, because you're like, man, I've been practicing against what I thought was a good defense, and then these guys come in and it's a totally different animal.
Well, it's funny because I reference that summer all the time because of what I saw, how like same thing, like, oh, that's what it looks like. And I
Right.
watched Brady Brandon LaFell one time was running to the huddle, but not fast enough for Brady, and he barked at him
Yeah.
to get in there faster. I'm like, oh, and there was, who was the corner that they had?
Browner,
No, the top corner. Gosh, he was
Gilmore.
No, I'm drawing a blank. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. And,
Okay.
but watching how he practiced versus
Oh,
how
yeah.
your guys practice, and it was just a different level of competition and expectations for yourself. It wasn't this is practice, it's okay if I mess up. It's this is practice, I'm here to get better. There's a difference. And so you saw that with them. And I remember they started off 0-2 that year. I'm like, oh my God, if they're 0-2, I don't know what a good team is, because like that look, and they went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. So I think that's one of the reasons why these joint practices are so important. And they're so, incredibly critical for the roster evaluation. Because like we talked about, like Brandon Coleman's looked pretty good past couple of days.
Right.
But if he goes up there against that vaunted front for the Jets, like I remember last year, like we were DeJuan Jones, remember him from Ohio State, the left tackle?
Yes, I do.
He had a preseason game against them and locked down every rusher they had. And it was like, oh, that's when I knew that he had kind of arrived, or that he could play in the NFL level, at the NFL level. And so sending, Brandon Coleman up there and being like, hey man, let's see what these one-on-ones look like now. Because, Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Failure are good rushers, but they don't have like that crazy pass rush juice that some of those guys up there have. So I think that'll be really interesting to see how he responds just to some different moves, some different skill sets. And if he does, then that's really informative. Same thing with, Daniels and all these different guys. So like, to me, this is the moment, right? The joint practice, the preseason, and then the other one we have against Miami. So I can't wait for those coming around the corner.
It was Darrelle Revis.
He was there at the time, huh?
And he competed his ass off. Like
he was the dude though. I mean, talk about a guy that was just incredible to watch. You
didn't want to lose a rep in practice. But like I said, it shows you like, okay, you want to get to this level, this is how you do it. So, but yeah, and I also I know like they're only going one practice with each team, partly because I think the concern is always that second day there are more fights and more injuries. So I think they want to curb that, but get some good work in. I like the joint practices as a reporter. I think they're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can go check those out. And I think also if you're like Adam Peters, like and if you're Dan, it's like, it's so good. And if you're Cliff and if you're Joe, it's like, I thought this was working, but it's not. Like we, at the high school level, we do like scrimmages preseason, and you're like, in practice, you're like, we are killing our defense with this. And you actually realize that like, it's because of a personnel issue that we're having on defense. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to this play is that good. And so I think it's a great piece of evaluation for your processes, your plays, your play design, your personnel. So that to me is one I've definitely got circled on the calendar.
Logan, tell people where they can find you. Take Command Podcast. We got that with Craig.
Yeah,
Craig lets you talk. Shout out, Craig.
Yeah, Take Command Podcast with Craig, the Command Center podcast with Fred and Santana, and then obviously the Take Command or the Command Center show, which is like the flagship program for the team. I'll be doing the sideline radio call with Bram and London this season, which will be a ton of fun. And I think that's all the big ones right now. Obviously, we'll be doing game day with Coach when season starts, with the film breakdowns and interviews with him. So yeah, I'll be everywhere, and looking forward when people come out and tell me they're watching our stuff.
And people can buy merch with you and Fred and Santana's faces on the T-shirt. How about
they can do that? Yes, they can do that. I don't know who wants that, but they can do that.
Well, I would like to get some partners so I could have my own merch. I don't think people want my face on there, but maybe if I'm paired with like you and Fred or something like that.
It's like you and Bram's faces. That's quite the shirt.
But I'm not sure they want that either. So like, I think we need someone else on there that might sell some merch for us.
Yeah.
But we can. I'm happy to play. It's be like, if Michael Jordan scored 70 and I didn't play, we combined for 70. So that's all, you know what I mean? There you go. Logan, thanks a lot. You're the best.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Logan for joining me, and thank you as always for tuning in. Like I said, I'll be back on Sunday wrapping up another practice. You get closer to preseason games and kind of finally start to see how they look against a different opponent. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.